Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Reignition. My name's Ryan G, and I'm here with my good friend Ashleigh Landry, who's here to talk about her experience. I know we've known each other since we met in community college, so that's going on like 7 years now?
I was 19. I'm 26, just turned 26.
That's 7 years then.
Almost.
Wow.
Because we met like the second semester of college. So going on 7 years sometime next year will be solid 7.
Yeah, we met at Santiago Community College. I call it Second Chance College. I needed a second chance, that's for sure. But I mean, speaking of second chances, you've been on a crazy journey. I mean, like, we've been in pretty consistent contact. I know you've had like high highs and low lows, and I know recently, within the last 2 months, you got out of a sober living home after being in rehab for a little bit. I know we're like just jumping right into it, but in terms of like your story, I guess beginning to end, like, I don't even know all the details. I've seen bits and pieces, but like,
yeah. So beginning to end, it's my addiction like really started when I turned 21. Like, I moved out to Austin, Texas, and I turned 21. That was basically what happened. I just turned 21, and I was bartending. I was up all nights, all hours of the night, because I had to work till sometimes 4 a.m. So it was a matter of drinking because customers were buying you shots, and doing cocaine to stay awake.
So you were working in a bar?
Yeah, I was working at several bars. I wasn't even holding down a job because I'd get so hungover the next day and be like, I don't feel like going. And it was just ridiculous. Like, I look back at it now and I try to convince myself that I wasn't an alcoholic or I wasn't an addict, and I literally just couldn't put it down. No matter how hard I tried.
Yeah, and I know because you moved out to Austin, and I know you've told me this. You said there's really like nothing to do out there except party.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Austin's like baby Vegas without the gambling.
Yeah, because I've been there a couple times, and I do have to admit, there's the nightlife there is crazy. There's lots of bars, there's lots of different hot spots, and even like the outdoor activities are just more stuff that I like to do, like hanging out in the parks or going to the rivers, going to the one of many bodies of water that are around Austin. It seems like everything was just kind of soaked in alcohol.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure
definitely.
when you're not partying, that's when the coke comes out.
Oh yeah.
But so what prompted you to move out there from California?
Well, I had originally moved to Seattle, and spent a year there. I actually got wrapped up in a really shitty relationship with a heroin addict. And I was dropped out of school because I was busy taking care of him, basically. So I wasn't doing well in school. I was getting into a fight with my uncle who I was living with, and it just wasn't going right. So I decided I was going to go to Texas instead to hang out with my dad. Eventually, I just kept spiraling. I was just repeating old habits from Seattle. I was just doing drugs. I was just going through shitty relationship after shitty relationship. And it just wasn't good. Like, I don't know why I decided to go to Texas specifically. I just knew I didn't want to be in California. And it felt like a safe place because there was somebody that I knew there, somebody I could live with. And yeah, that's pretty much the only reason why. I'd been visiting my dad who had moved out there like 10 years prior. And every time I went, I really, really loved it. So I was like, this is probably a great place to live. Little did I know when I got there, it really wasn't a great place to live. I miss it every day. I have my friends out there. My dad's still out there, but there's really nothing to do. Yeah. It's just all drinking based. It really is.
Yeah. And how long did that cycle go on for of working at bars and having like this kind of party lifestyle? You liked the environment, you were working in the environment. It seemed like you were in there almost, not 24/7, but like that was your spot. That was where you were at. And so how long were you in Austin for doing that until you realize like, oh, hey, maybe this isn't so good?
5 years actually. What made me want to stop was this one night I got into a really, really big fight with one of my boyfriends, my ex-boyfriend Josh. He was 13 years older than me. He was 38, I was 25, and here I was thinking that I found like my saving grace in life because he was older and he was gonna take care of me. We wanted to we didn't want to get married. We talked about getting married, talked about having kids, buying a house. They were all things that I wanted at that time. So to hear someone say it and then say that they wanted to be sober too, was like a big wake up call for me. Turns out he wasn't sober. He was very, very addicted to cocaine. Like, so far gone, you can't even fathom it sometimes. I mean, just to the point of where he ripped out the dash in his car because he thought someone was in it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
does cocaine, can you get like that, like paranoia or like hallucinations from it?
From the lack of sleep, if you're doing it so much, you start to, it's like a one-way ticket to the shadow world.
Wow.
You start seeing things, you're going up to people, you're hearing things. He's still convinced that there's like a gang out there like after him.
Wow. I guess I had heard of stories, like I knew paranoia was possible, but I guess I didn't realize like the mechanisms that caused it. But I mean, I could imagine if you are doing cocaine and like possibly mixing that with drinking and doing it all the time and not sleeping, and if you are sleeping, it's not quality because you have this stimulant in your system.
Mm-hmm.
I could see how that could eventually lead to someone experiencing like that paranoia, believing that somebody's in their dashboard.
Oh yeah,
That's crazy.
Mean, he went up to oh my god, he went up to this person that was taking pictures and he swore they were taking pictures of him, and he walks up to her and goes, "I'm right here." And I was the most embarrassed I think I've ever been in my entire life. Me and my friends actually still laugh about it though. But we got in a really big fight one night when we were in a hotel room, in a sketchy hotel room at that in the middle of Taylor, Texas. And he got so paranoid he went through my phone, ended up finding out that I had, hung out with another guy when we were broken up, and started calling me a cheat and a lie. And we were both, I wasn't on coke at that time, I was just drunk, but he was coked out of his mind and drunk, and he just turned into a monster. So I ended up having to take off, like just took off out of the room, had no sleep. It was like 4:00 in the morning, rushed to my dad's house, packed up everything that I could, didn't even say goodbye to my dad, and took off to Arizona where my grandpa lives. I just knew that I couldn't wake up one day and be almost 40 and still be living like this. Like, he was still living with his dad, had several felonies because of DUIs, like driving under the influence. And I just didn't want that for myself. And I guess that was really the biggest motivation that I could have had, was dating him.
I'd say that's a good realization to have too, like being in that environment and being motivated and inspired to get out, to go, no, this is not it.
Mm-hmm.
And making that like big dramatic, like overnight move for yourself. Going back to like being out in Austin, like being 21, was there an escalation that happened, or was it like as soon as you turned 21, you're like, cool, I can drink, and it was just jumping right in, and it was just like 0 to 100, and you just went for it, and that was what you were doing for those 5 years?
Yeah, it was pretty much the 0 to 100 route. I was so excited that I could go to bars and I could meet people, and I just became someone that I didn't recognize anymore. Yeah.
That's good that you had that realization though, and like pulled yourself out of it.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm happy that we're sitting across from each other, here after knowing each other for 7 years, and that you're, not still in Austin keeping that going. So like, I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
And then in terms of like what you, like, because I know that you came out to California, you did go to rehab. Was it for both alcohol and cocaine?
I went for alcohol. Cocaine, I'm not going to say that I wasn't addicted, but it was something I was definitely able to put down.
Gotcha.
Alcohol, on the other hand, I couldn't. I would tell myself that I wasn't going to drink, and I would literally pass my dad's house and go to the gas station like on autopilot. Like I couldn't even keep myself from doing it.
Yeah.
So I was drinking every night. I mean, one day I walked out and I was hoping to be discreet and my dad wouldn't see me, because my dad lives out on a ranch in Texas that's 17 acres, and he was in his office across the property, and I was thinking that I was going to be super discreet. He came out at the exact same time, and I was carrying 14 liquor bottles that I had stashed under my bed.
Wow.
Yep. Like 2 under my arm, like 3 on the side, like carrying some in my purse. It was ridiculous.
And so this was like an everyday thing.
Yeah.
Was it like an all day everything, or was it more at the end of the day? Like
it was more at the end of the day, but there were days that I would wake up, see the liquor bottle next to me, and be like, well, I'm off today.
And then that was it. Wow. And so you had that fight, realized that was not the life that you wanted, went to Arizona. And how long were you in Arizona for before you came to California?
Just a couple days.
Okay.
Yeah, just
so it was
to see
really
my
quick.
family, sober up. Yep. Didn't even end up sobering up. Like, got to my grandfather's in Tucson, and the first thing I did was drink a beer.
I'm not going to lie, Tucson's kind of a tough place to be sober.
Yeah. Also nothing to do.
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of like Texas. It's flat and it's hot, but I would say it might be even worse. I mean, no disrespect to Tucson. I know people that live there, but even the people that I know that live there are like, it's not.
I know, and I actually want to move there to be with my family, but I'm thinking that I need to have probably a year or two sober before that happens.
Yeah, have that strength. I do know that there's a mountain nearby. I think it's Yellow Mountain.
Sure.
I could be completely wrong. I have no idea. So you were in Tucson for a couple days and came out to California, and did you immediately go to rehab?
No, I actually immediately went to work, because I was like, oh, I need to work. And what did I do? Bartend. So that didn't help me at all. Pretty much the first day on the job, they were like, oh, we infuse all of our own liquors. We need you to taste test all of them. So I had done a little bit better. I haven't touched cocaine in months, since April-ish, March, April-ish. But I just couldn't stop. It didn't matter how hard I tried. I looked in the mirror every single day and was just embarrassed that I ended up like this, because this was not how I was raised. I was raised in a really, really good home. My parents are divorced now, but I was still raised in a very loving home. My parents didn't fight a lot. They didn't hit me. They didn't, I had real love in my family, and I had a really, really good upbringing. So to see myself turn out the way I did was just, it just hurt really badly. And I think that's what even made me an alcoholic even more and made me drink even more, was because I was a straight A student when I was a kid. I mean, I had everything that I wanted. I had great parents. I could have been somebody, because I could have had a really good education, but my dad left and I just wanted to smoke weed. I graduated high school with a 1.7 GPA. Went to college, literally dropped just about every semester, or at least dropped a class a semester. And then finally just stopped going altogether. Yeah, it just sucks. I'm embarrassed, I guess.
This is heavy. I don't know.
It is heavy.
I mean, I love you. You're a good friend, and I know like with this conversation, I'm finding out a lot of these things. I guess just hearing it all at once. These may have been stories that I've heard over the years, but yeah, all at once. Yeah, I mean, I could see how that would be heartbreaking, especially to come, because you grew up around,
Mission Viejo.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so it was around this area, Southern California. Yeah, it is interesting to, especially being in an area that does have a lot of like wealth in it and really high standards, like you're saying, like you were getting straight A's, and then
I had a private education. I was going to private school. Like it's just, yeah. But that's also like something that my mom always used to warn me about when I was a kid. She was like, we have money. Like there's going to be a lot of drugs around. Because they're going to look for you because they know that you have the money to spend on it. So I should have listened. I'll never forget this one day too, that I was dating the heroin addict his name is Blaine, up in Washington. He was so far gone. I was an avid stoner, but I wouldn't say that I was a full-blown addict by that time. And I wish I could go back and eat my words, because I told him I wish I wasn't an addict so I could understand what you're going through.
Now here you have a better understanding of what he was going through. Yeah. It really shows that it can affect anyone too. It doesn't matter like who you are, where you come from, what your upbringing is. Like this stuff can affect anybody. Because
there are people who are just born into that like addict lifestyle and they grow up like that, but no, it can happen to anybody for sure.
Yeah.
Because I had a great life. There was no reason for me to ever look at my life and think, oh, it's so bad that I need to resort to drugs and alcohol. But I did.
I can see after being that, especially like knowing, I guess maybe like the high level potential that you had that was ultimately ruined by your addiction, that could be kind of a perpetuating like negative cycle where like you drink and you like feel bad about it, and then you feel bad so you drink. Is that, I don't know, would that be accurate?
Yes. I did drink a lot because I wanted to feel better. I don't know if I was looking at myself at the time thinking like, oh, I'm drinking because I'm upset that I'm an alcoholic. I don't think I really wanted to recognize it until this year when I had that fight with my ex and was so scared that I was going to wake up one day and be 40 years old, still bartending and doing coke every night. My heart gives out. I mean, my dad has a bad heart. Like, heart disease runs in my family. I could kill myself. And it was just really scary. Yeah.
And going back to, I mean, this path that you took, so you had moved out here to California and had gotten a job bartending. And how long were you doing that for?
I was so depressed from the breakup and from drinking that I really only lasted at that place like a month. And I couldn't work. I just couldn't. I was living at my grandma's house. My mom and my grandma were nice enough to pay my bills for a couple months so I could just recover. But I had to go back to Texas to get more of my things because I decided to come out to California permanently. And me and my ex got back together. I went and picked him up. He was coked out of his mind in a hotel in Georgetown, Texas. I picked him up. We went to his dad's house, packed up all of his things, and he came with me the next day. Then we get here to California. You know, we want to be sober. We're staying at my grandma's house. We're going to go get our own place. We're going to find jobs. But both of us were going to get jobs bartending again. Because that was really, I mean, I don't have a college degree. I dropped out. That's really all I could do and still make good money. He was going to do the same thing, serving, bartending, still being involved in that restaurant industry. And we got into another huge fight because all we were doing still was not finding jobs. We were laying in bed all day smoking weed. We were sober from alcohol and cocaine, but we were still not doing anything with our lives. And we got in this huge fight one night because I ended up drinking at my mom's house on 4th of July, and I got so pissed off because my stepbrother had asked him, like, hey, if you ever need a Coke plug, just let me know. And I was drinking. I was emotional. I told him, like, I think you need to go home. And he was like, okay, fine, you know, whatever. But then the next morning, I realized that I didn't really want him to go. I was just caught up in a lot of feelings. And I went crazy, like, just broke down mentally. He left, and 2 days later, I admitted myself into rehab.
Wow. That is a long bumpy journey.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And I know we were catching up the other day, and you were telling me about rehab, because I don't know anything about how that works. I guess I didn't necessarily, like, I when I was in college, I was around people that did do a lot of drugs, and like I tried things here and there, but for the most part could keep the healthy relationship with it. And even at this point, I'm like, like I'm okay being sober, and that was never a struggle that I had personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know, I mean, I saw friends that kind of got in deep, and that having that exposure to that could have been what, like, I kind of saw the negative sides of it, saw people that were just so out of it that, like, they would have no recollection of what's going on. Like, people were messing with them, and
Mm-hmm.
and seeing like the darker side of things, I know it kept me out of it. But I did know people that did go to rehab, but it was one of those things where it's like they would just disappear one day and go, oh, what happened to this person? They go, oh, they're in rehab. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
But then you would just, like, never, like, we wouldn't, at least I wouldn't hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
And so but I didn't know what that process is like. I mean, beginning to end, I don't know how you get into a place, what the process is, how long you have to stay there for, how that works at all.
Well, it's really just processed through your insurance. Was on my mom's insurance, so they, I got in within basically a day. I mean, it really wasn't that hard. They just had to call my insurance, and the insurance was like, okay, we'll cover this much. We just need, this much out of pocket from you. And my mom called my dad and said, she wants to go to rehab, and he was like, all right, send her, and paid for it immediately because he wanted me to get better. And I did go for actually not that long. I was only in there for 15 days. Normally, I guess now insurances are like not really covering rehab, which I am wanting to fight pretty hard for insurance to start covering that more, because I really wanted to be in there 60 days. I knew that I needed it. My insurance only covered up to 15 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were like, well, it's her first time. If she really needs it, we'll give her more days, like, next time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really? That's what the insurance company said?
Basically.
Wow. So they're almost betting on it not working. Like, we'll give her a couple weeks. It seems like they want you to fail. If you go, hey, I need 2 months, and they go, we'll give you 2 weeks. And you go, no, I need more time. And they go, well, we can give her more time next time.
Yeah.
So that would mean you'd go to rehab. If it didn't work, you'd ultimately leave, relapse. This, cycle of chaos would continue, and then the insurance company would be like, okay, fine, we'll give you more days.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, basically. So they're almost expecting you, they're almost just expecting you to be cured in 15 days. Like, oh, she doesn't need it. She'll be fine. I went to a sober living house immediately. The rehab I went to was called New Directions for Women. They have a sober living house linked, like, to the rehab center that's literally, like, basically next door. And we were living there. I was there for a month, and I just couldn't stand it. Like, had this roommate that was, still slacking off. Our house mom ended up finding liquor bottles in her room. So that was already an influence. She influenced one of my other roommates to relapse also. Luckily she got away with it, but it just wasn't a good environment for me to be in. So I left. I was out like 2 days and immediately wanted to start drinking again. Called my sponsor that I had from AA, and she was like, okay, well, this is probably a sign that we need to get you back into sober living. And I said, okay, reluctantly. Found this house called Higher Plains, which is awful, by the way. There are 11 girls in that house. 6 girls to a bedroom for me. Ooh. Yeah. There was me. I had 5 other roommates. We were in bunk beds. There was no AC. I mean, it was in the middle of summer. It was just disgusting. I had to have 2 little baby fans, like, hooked onto my...
That sounds miserable. Oh
hooked onto my bed just to keep me cool at night.
Wow.
And they played like this weird hazing game with you. Not like drinking hazing, but like, oh, she's new. We're going to flip her bed and take all the covers off of it if she doesn't do her chores. And they would give you extra chores at the end of the week. And it was so miserable. I lasted in that sober living house 9 days. And I went back to my grandma's, and I've been way happier ever since.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I know, going back to your time in rehab, what do they put you on a plan, or is there some sort of assessment? Like I said, like I have no idea what even goes on.
We talked to some people, like they did kind of assess us and talk to us. Like we were doing group therapy. They taught us a lot of coping skills, how to cope with your emotions and not turn to drugs and alcohol every time you're feeling bad. I don't know if it was, they didn't like assess us in a way that's like, oh, you're way worse than this person, or you're better than this person, or you have this or that. But they would kind of tell me that like, oh, you have probably severe depression or a lot of anxiety. And I knew I had both of those things. I'd been diagnosed with them when I was a kid. And I stopped taking my meds at one point, which is probably the dumbest thing I could have ever done. I probably wouldn't be here now like this if I had stayed on my medication. Mm. Yeah.
And so that rehab, were there activities that you did in there as well? I mean, obviously you have a large amount of support in there. I'd imagine people that you can talk to, resources that you can use. Did you take trips? Did they do like therapy, yoga? I've heard of places doing that.
We did some yoga. They took us to the beach every Thursday. We just had each other, honestly. We had a personal chef that cooked us like amazing food.
That's nice.
I gained like 5 pounds in rehab in 15 days.
So you're eating good in there.
I was eating good. Yeah. It was awesome. But I had the girls that we were doing the therapy with, and we all became like really close in there. Like we were all each other had. Yeah. We couldn't talk to our families. We didn't have friends.
You couldn't talk to your families? Was it like no outside influence?
Yeah, for 14 days.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, no talking to each other. So all we had was each other, because we pretty much all got in at the same time. Mm-hmm. And we were just really close. They helped me through a lot. I don't think I would have been able to do it without those girls.
Wow.
Yeah.
And transferring from rehab to a sober living home, what's the main difference between, like, I guess those two institutions?
You just have control of your life more when you're out in sober living. Like when you're in rehab, you can't leave. Like you don't have access to your phone. You don't have a car. You only watch TV when they say you can watch TV. You have to get up at a certain time. You have to go to bed by a certain time. We're in sober living. It's like we do have a curfew. We do have to be home by 10 or 11, sometimes midnight on the weekends. But the first sober living house I was in, we had to breathalyze every single night. And we were getting drug tested 2 to 3 days a week by the rehab center. But the second sober living house I went to was not like that at all. Like we were not being held accountable of our sobriety. I could have been using a lot and they never would have known. So that was also a big reason why I didn't want to be in that sober living house anymore either, because I wasn't being held accountable for my sobriety.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that. And in either situation, and obviously in rehab, everything's very structured. You're on a schedule, I'm sure, being at least monitored in one way or another. But and so you couldn't have a job in rehab. Being in a sober living home, could you go out and work?
We could if we wanted to, but they were still highly encouraging us not to for a little bit. They wanted us to just focus on our sobriety instead. And I found that very ridiculous because me not being able to work was just putting me into debt. And I mean, thankfully my parents paid it off for me. But I was just struggling. I had to pull out a loan. I mean, it's just not okay. Like,
If I do feel like that's a little silly too, especially for me. I can almost like get lost in my work, whatever it is I'm doing. Like it's a good way to pass the time, and it gives me like purpose and something to focus on. So not being able to work, I mean even now, because I'm between jobs right now. This is a good way of saying unemployed. But even now, I mean, I still have I have this, which has been a very fun personal project. But even then, like I still am feeling like a little bit. I'm not lost, but almost like I'm not quite sure what my purpose is.
yeah, a little missing piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm not doing something that's like making money for me, and that's kind of part of being a person in today's day and age. Like you go out, you do something, hopefully you enjoy the thing you do, and it makes money.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like not having that thing to work on, especially if you're working in an environment that does challenge you, maybe you can use skills that you want to get better at to be better at the job, and it almost inspires you in that way. When you don't have that, I don't know. I feel like I personally would have a hard time finding my own purpose, and also I'd be bored.
I was so bored. I mean, it was just ridiculous. All I was doing was going to meetings like constantly and going to outpatient rehab, and like my life was consumed in this AA project that I honestly didn't find very helpful. They base themselves off of, oh, we're a we program, like we're here to help each other. But it's the most selfish thing I think I've ever seen.
How so?
I mean, they are just so all about themselves, like, and their sobriety and them getting help. I find it ridiculous. I've never felt more alone. I felt like I was getting sober because I was getting sober, not because I had anybody helping me, not because I had anybody caring about me, not because I had anybody wanting me to get sober other than myself. After I left the second sober living house, I pretty much deleted everybody I met from AA, and I didn't have a single person contact me to see if I was okay.
Wow, that's really interesting, because it's not, I mean, from an outside perspective, like, again, I've never been to an AA meeting. I don't know much about it, but like my idea of it would be that it's this community of people and everyone's helping each other, like, hey, stay on this wagon. But are you saying it was like almost people using like, I've been sober for this amount of days, and almost going about it like with a holier than thou? Yeah, but it's easier to say, well, if I can do it, then you can do it. But if that's where it's at, that's not very helpful, because anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Anybody can say that.
I still hear a lot of stories about people saying like, oh, one day I called this person, was like, oh, I found out that my ex-wife's marrying another woman, and he was calling a sponsor, like freaking out, and all his sponsors said, what are you doing to help another alcoholic? And he's like, well, nothing. And he's like, hung up the phone on him.
Whoa.
He's like, well, go out there and help somebody.
Wow.
Stop feeling sorry for yourself.
That's kind of a crazy thing to hear, especially if you're kind of teetering on the edge and you're going, hey, whoa, this crazy thing happened in my life. And you might have that urge to hit the bottle again, and to call your sponsor, that's the person who's supposed to be there for you, right?
Yeah.
Like that's almost like your partner. If you're struggling, you can call them. If you have questions, you can call them. And oh man,
yeah.
What a terrible position to be in.
I honestly am not a fan of AA. I've been staying they have a term in AA called being dry, which means that you're not going to AA meetings and you're not working the program. You're not working the 12 steps of the AA recovery. And so currently I am dry because I am not working it, and I feel perfectly fine. Like, they say, oh, people who are dry are really cranky. I'm not cranky. I even had my boyfriend tell me that because he's been sober 13 months. Yeah. And he told me that I was dry. And I was like, what's wrong with being dry? He's like, nothing, but most of the time they're really cranky.
So that's like a negative statement saying that they're dry, as in being sober but not involved in AA, so they're not as happy as the people in AA.
Yeah. AA is like a cult.
Yeah.
So it's, and the thing is like they always say at the beginning of the meeting is like the only requirement of AA is the desire to get sober. It's like, so you can be one of us as long as you're sober. You know, it just feels so, I think people who are so heavily involved in AA are just brainwashed. I mean, it comes down to some self-will and some self-respect too. Like, if you really want to be sober, you're going to do it.
Yeah. I think, because I know you're a very strong-willed person. Like, you had the intuition to go, oh, hey, this isn't the life that I wanted, and make the moves for yourself. And I hate to say it, but not everybody is that way. So it might take almost like this semi-religious cult-like process to get someone, like, they might need to feel like they're a part of something bigger than just themselves to be inspired to be sober. So I could see how that could be helpful for some people.
Yeah.
And how someone like you would look at that and go, this is weird. Like, this is not working for me at all.
Yeah.
And again, and being dry or not being involved with it because you didn't feel like it was doing anything for you and you felt you could do more on your own.
Yeah.
Which, like,
I felt like I was alone in the program anyway.
Wow.
Like I said, I mean, I was surrounded by all these people. I mean, even when it comes down to it, sometimes I don't even feel like I could talk to my boyfriend about being sober, like, or wanting to drink. Because sometimes I feel like it just comes down to them looking at you negatively. Oh, you want to drink?
I see. There you go. Like, stay away from me. Don't influence me.
Yeah, don't, like, I don't want to be brought down by your bullshit.
Wow.
Like, it's just, it's not a fun program for me. And I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people do need that structure. A lot of people don't have that will to stop, or they come from like really, really bad backgrounds and there's like childhood trauma, PTSD, and they need those people and they need that structure that's going to keep them from drinking. But I have support. Like, I have a really amazing family. I have my faith in God. And that's really what keeps me going. Like, I don't need this AA in order to make me feel like I'm going to be somebody or get somewhere because I'm sober.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good mindset to have. And I mean, it can definitely help you get through it. For someone who might be like kind of in the middle of this chaos within their own life, they might be still struggling with addiction or might be wanting to make a change, whether they're in rehab or in recovery or even have been sober for a while, but it is like hard. Like, is there any sort of like advice that you would give to someone who's in that position?
That's still struggling.
Yeah, that might be like kind of still in the middle of it. Because I know you're on the tail end of it. I know addiction's one of those things that it seems like it's something that you are always going to kind of carry in the back of your head, just because like you know what it feels like.
Yeah. And
you can find yourself in a position, whether it's tomorrow or like 10 years from now, where you just go like, oh man, like you might actually like, man, I miss that feeling, or I crave that feeling, because you already know it. So it's really hard. You can't forget something you've experienced. You can just not partake in it. But I guess for like kind of coming out the other side and being where you're at now, if someone wants to get from a position of having all this chaos in their life and not being the person that they want to be, and they want to make that transition as well, like where's a good place to start, or like what's something that maybe they have to come to terms with themselves, if that's a good question.
Rehab was great. I actually had a fantastic time in rehab. Like I said, I was getting home cooked meals every day. We were doing like sound baths, like people were coming in and like playing these little bowls, and we were just like napping off into like some existence. I learned whatever, and we did like yoga. They took us to the beach. Like I had a really, really, really good experience in rehab. It was when I got out that I started struggling more. I was in rehab not wanting to drink. So I think going to rehab is a great place to start. What you do when you get out is kind of up to you. It's whether you have that willpower or not, I think. I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear that. I think a lot of people are like, well, how is that going to help me? It's not. Like, this is you and this is your journey and it's who you are. And if you want to stay sober, then you need to find that willpower.
Yeah. And find that strength within themselves to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Easier said than done.
Exactly.
It's tough. I imagine it's tough.
I don't think you can try AA. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying it. It didn't work for me. It probably never will work for me. I still go to a meeting here and there. Every time I'm there, I'm listening to people go off about their stories of why they're not sober, or why they're sober and how they were such fuck ups at one point and how they're not anymore. And it's like, most of you guys still have felonies. Like, you're still really not going anywhere in life. What are you offering me? What is the advice that you're giving me right now? That someday I can be you?
I can see why. Yeah, that might not be like a good role model to hold, besides the fact that they're experiencing, like, still being in that spot in life, but they're doing it sober.
Yeah.
I'd say that probably takes quite a bit of strength to do.
And it takes a lot out of the person having to listen to it.
I could see that, especially how long are the meetings typically?
An hour to an hour and a half.
Okay. And it's like I'd imagine
a lot of people.
You get there, you kind of greet people, everyone sits down, and then you listen to people go up and talk.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're just listening to people talk about, like, oh, if I can do it, you can do it too. And I struggled like this and I did this. And at the end of every meeting, I'm like, I don't care.
Gotcha.
And that's why it's such a selfish program, because all these people are going up there to share their hope, experience, strength, all that stuff. And it's worth nothing unless you can do it for yourself.
I see. I could see how maybe listening to those stories could inspire somebody listening to get sober, going like, oh, wow. Like, especially listening to someone talk about challenges and adversity that they've encountered in their life and their struggle with addiction, maybe to ease the pain or whatever it is, and to kind of continue to go through life and overcoming the obstacles that life throws your way, but going through it sober. I could see how that would be inspiring to someone who also has the same goal, being like, it, maybe like stopping drinking isn't going to be a magic bullet that's going to completely flip your life around.
Exactly.
But it's a step in the right direction. Now you can go through life with a cleared head, maybe feeling better about yourself, able to make better decisions and maybe plan for your future a little more than living in the now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think living in the now is important, but I know, like, sometimes if you drink a lot, especially, you're almost sacrificing your future happiness for that moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, living in the moment is definitely all you can do. Being an addict isn't like a weekly or a monthly or a yearly thing. It's a day-to-day thing. It's what am I doing to stay sober today? It's not what am I doing to stay sober a week from now, or like take it a day at a time. Live in the moment. Be who you need to be in that moment, and don't worry about anybody or anything else. Again, that's why AA is so selfish. And I don't find the program of a bunch of selfish people sitting together being selfish helpful. you have to, like I said, you just have to find that self-will, and you have to find that strength. I mean, that's all it's going to come down to. Find a therapist, find some sober friends, like, and I mean actual sober friends, not like addicts that are now sober. Find some real people that don't have an addiction. Find a church group, go talk to your family. Like, there's got to be something out there for you that's better than AA.
Gotcha. Find a community, whether it's with your family, with the church, with friends, or even possibly with AA, if that's what works for people. But that's what it seems like. It seems like it takes other people, it takes finding the community, and it also takes that internal strength. It's a combination of both, of surrounding yourself with people who care about you, who will do what they can to help you, and also as an individual yourself, finding the strength to also do what's best for you and to do and to help yourself. And I think that's a good combination of being able to get somebody out of that.
I find it difficult to deal with people in AA that are sharing their stories because they seem to be so far off and so much more far gone than I ever was that sometimes I almost question if I ever really had a problem or an addiction, or if I just had a problem. Because I was never out on the streets. I was never prostituting. I was never homeless. I always had a job. I always had a place to live. I never got kicked out of the house. I wasn't so bad that I just, couldn't work or didn't have a life. I never got a DUI. I never hurt anybody. I never stole from anybody. I never did any of that. Like, some of these people are like really, really far gone. And the people that have been really far gone have been people that, even though they're sober, I still don't know how to trust. I don't look at them and want to trust them at all.
I'd imagine that there's varying degrees of addiction. And I know, like, being in a position where like you're homeless, hurting people, stealing, like almost doing whatever you possibly can do to fulfill that addiction. I know that's an extreme of it, but I mean, my only experience with addiction is with nicotine. I went to college and everyone has those little pens that they're passing around. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's what people are doing. Sure. And I'm like, oh, hey, that's pretty fun. And actually just quit this year. Given it was probably like the 5th time that I
wish
quit.
I could say the same.
Yeah, and I know it doesn't like that. I don't know. It's hard to compare that to like an addiction to anything else. But I mean, like I have gotten the physical cravings and things like that, but I could never see myself being in a spot where I would go to those extreme measures to fulfill that addiction. And for that reason, I know it's not the same as being addicted to alcohol or like hard drugs, like where you almost have that physical need and have that extreme drive to do something you wouldn't do under normal circumstances just to get that a hold of money or get a hold of that substance. But I still, just because you're not living at that extreme doesn't necessarily mean that like it's not on one level or another addiction. And I know people can get addicted to tons of different things, and I know that there are varying degrees, but I can see how listening to people who have been on that extreme spectrum might not speak directly to you because you're like, I've never been there. Like, you weren't going through these extremes in life to get your fix, but it was still in one way or another like fucking up your life and driving you down a path that you didn't want to go down. I could see how, especially if I don't know, if people in AA aren't that helpful, if they're just getting up there, it almost sounds like maybe like them getting up there is more for them than it is for the people hearing it. Did you ever get up and speak at meetings?
No, almost never.
Do you think doing that would have helped, or it was just one of those things where you go, like this, it just wasn't speaking to you at all. It just wasn't your thing.
It didn't speak to me. It wasn't my thing. It wasn't, what was I going to go up and say that like, oh, I wasn't as bad as you guys. I'm sorry that you are.
Damn.
Like, I mean, those meetings felt so fake to me and so forced. I mean, it just I didn't feel comfortable in that program.
Gotcha.
Like, I just really didn't. I met some people. I know I met my boyfriend there, but like I said, even sometimes I don't even feel like I can talk to him. I mean, I relapsed once after I got out of rehab. I had a beer with my cousin. And I just remember feeling so guilty. Like I was betraying AA. And that's not how I want to feel. That's not how a group of people should make you feel.
Yeah, that does sound extremely negative as opposed to,
yeah,
I don't know, almost the shame that comes along with it, as opposed to maybe a better feeling would be like realizing I made a mistake. And instead of like feeling that shame and like that really powerful negative emotion, understanding that like you're a person, you're not perfect. Like sometimes you fall down a few times, but as long as you get back up every time and you're just like, no, I'm going to get it this time. Like that's the important part.
I mean, AA is technically what they want you to do. Yeah. Like you fall down, just stand back up again. But it's still that like mindset that they have embedded inside of you that you drink and it's just like, oh my God, I've really betrayed AA. I've betrayed everyone there. They hand out chips for various lengths of sobriety, and you go up there and you're taking your 1 year chip, then you have to come back 6 or the next day and you pick up a chip and you have to start all over again. Gotcha. And like that embarrassment that you feel and that shame that everybody's like, oh shit, he relapsed. And it's like they're looking at you. They're talking about you.
Do you think there's like judgment, almost like I mean, the only thing that I really can compare it to is church. You go and they're just like, oh, did you hear what they did? Oh my God,
did you see them? They were unchaperoned.
They did not leave enough room for Jesus, let me tell you. No, but is it like similar to like you have to go in and turn in your chip and pick up, like day one, or to like acknowledge that you relapsed? Do you think it's more of that judgment? Because I would have thought it would have been like, everyone would be like, hey, like that's okay. Like you got it, like getting behind you, or is it just like, oh shit, that guy relapsed? Like
to me, I've seen more negativity come out of it than I have positivity.
Wow.
Like I had a friend that relapsed. She went and took left her 30-day chip, 60-day chip or whatever, and went right back and picked up the 24-hour chip. They call it. Oh, you made it 24 hours sober, and nobody was like, oh, it's okay, you got this. Everybody got quiet.
Oh, nobody really knew what to do.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's just like, I mean, they clapped for her after she went and got it, but they were like, she had set her sobriety date and people were like, I had to say, like, yeah, she knows like what day today is. Like, that's her sobriety date. It's just embarrassing. Like, it's just, I feel, they even say that at the beginning of every meeting. They're like, oh, stand up if you're new. And it's not to embarrass you, but it's so we can get to know you better. Yeah. And it's just like, no, this is embarrassing. Like, it's genuinely embarrassing for me to be at an AA meeting.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I could understand why you wouldn't want to be in that environment then. But you still found the tools like in your own life, in your own community to get out of that, even if it didn't involve AA.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. I guess if you could maybe like give your 20-year-old self advice, maybe someone who may have been might be like right now in your shoes, like they might be 20 turning 21 and wanting to jump like all in, going like, hey, this is fun, this is really cool, because it is fun, it is cool, and it is really easy to go all in on. For someone in that position, or maybe like I don't know, a past version of yourself, like what would you tell that person?
If alcohol feels like the missing piece in your life already, don't start drinking. If that brings you comfort and it brings you warmth and it feels like your friend, you're already an addict.
Damn. All right. I like that, short and to the point.
Yeah.
I mean, we can end it there. Is there anything else about like your story? Any other aspects that you want to talk about or information that you want to get out?
Fight for insurance to support people longer.
Yeah, that's actually ridiculous. That you're saying that they're not even supporting
30 days.
people. No, not even for 30 days. You said it was 15. And I'd imagine there might be some insurance companies that just won't support you at all.
Mm-hmm. It's like if you've been in and out of rehab, they'll support you for longer days, but not your first go.
Whoa.
They're just like, it's like they expect you to just be cured.
Well, that's kind of, I mean, with like in the insurance model, they don't want to cure people. They want to like do more preventative stuff, things that are longer lasting so they can make more money.
Yeah.
What do you think that has to do with?
Most definitely.
Oh my gosh, that is heartbreaking.
It really is. Healthcare in America right now is some of the worst I've ever seen. Like, people are not getting the help that they need. Like, real help. Because if I could have stayed in rehab longer, I would have. I would have liked to have done 60 days. I mean, everything happens for a reason. I never would have met my boyfriend if I hadn't. And he's great. I mean, he makes me really, really happy. When it comes to the shared addiction, I don't talk to him much about it. Because I don't feel comfortable talking to him about it, which is unfortunate. But in every other aspect of life, he makes me like the happiest I've ever been.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I know things work out for a reason. Do you think this whole process would have been easier if you could have spent those 60 days in there?
I think so. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, do you know if there's like any, I guess, like movements or legislation or anyone pushing back on insurance companies to support people going to rehab for longer?
I don't, and I would love to see one get started.
Okay. That might be something we will have to look into, because if there is something, I'll put it in the show notes so people can be aware of it if there is like a movement towards that. And I know you're not like, do you use social media a whole lot or not really? Yeah.
No.
You can promote it if you want, if you like, if people care to like follow you on your journey, but also know like I don't know, it's social media. I know you don't use it a whole lot. Yeah. If you don't want to promote it, you don't have to. If you can, you're more than welcome to.
Will if I feel like it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's a good spot to end it. I'm glad that you've made it to this point.
Thank you.
After hearing your story in one conversation, I feel like I know more about you now and more about your journey. I'm really grateful that you went through it. And yeah, I don't know. Thanks for talking to me. Thanks for being a guest on Reignition. I really appreciate you.
Oh my God. Happy to be here.
All right. Peace out, everybody.